I'm sitting in an empty church building, keys in my hand, about to hand them over for the last time. The pews, we prayed together, laughed together, cried together. The altar where marriages got restored and people gave their lives to Christ. All of it gone in an instant. Think about it. And in that moment, I didn't feel faith. I felt forgotten. Come to the front of the class. It's what I like to call the perfect storm. That was 2020. COVID has shut down our city. Our finances were stretched to the breaking point. Our people were scattered across screens, and the building that held every milestone, every memory, every moment that made Mars Hill what it wasn't ours anymore. I wish I could tell you I handled it like a seasoned pastor, steady faith, a strong word, a confident plan, but the truth of the matter, I wrestled with God the entire way. And today, I'm starting something I've never done before. I'm going to tell you the whole story, not the pulpit version, the real one. And I wrote it all down in a book called When Faith Feels Far. So, before we get into where this goes, let me welcome you and tell you what this series is all about. Welcome to the Clarence Stowers Leadership Podcast, a podcast about becoming 1% better every day. And now your host, yours truly, Clarence Stowers. I want to take you behind the scenes why I wrote this book, When Faith Feels Far. It's my fourth book, and I thank God that I've been given the space, the resources, and the opportunity to put pen to paper. And so we want to dive deep into that. We want to get behind the scenes of overcoming doubt, finding joy, and trusting God in life's hardships. And as we dig into this book, if you don't catch anything else, know this, that your collapse is not the end. It is the Christ authoring beginning. Did you catch that? I'm sitting in an empty church building, keys in my hand, about to hand them over for the last time. The pews, we prayed together, laughed together, cried together. The altar where marriages got restored and people gave their lives to Christ. All of it gone in an instant. Think about it. And in that moment, I didn't feel faith. I felt forgotten. Come to the front of the class. It's what I like to call the perfect storm. That was 2020. COVID has shut down our city. Our finances were stretched to the breaking point. Our people were scattered across screens, and the building that held every milestone, every memory, every moment that made Mars Hill what it wasn't ours anymore. I wish I could tell you I handled it like a seasoned pastor, steady faith, a strong word, a confident plan, but the truth of the matter, I wrestled with God the entire way. And today, I'm starting something I've never done before. I'm going to tell you the whole story, not the pulpit version, the real one. And I wrote it all down in a book called When Faith Feels Far. So, before we get into where this goes, let me welcome you and tell you what this series is all about. This is the start of a brand new series. If you ever had to start over after losing everything, if you've ever stood in the rubble of a life you didn't plan and wondered if God was still paying attention, This series is for you. Over the next 10 weeks, I'm walking through my book, When Faith Feels Far, Overcoming Doubt, Finding Joy, and Trusting God in Life's Hardships. Now, this is episode 50 of my podcast, The Foundation, the story behind the story. Let me tell you exactly what you're walking into. Today's episode is different from the rest. Think about it for one moment. I'm not teaching a framework or giving you 3 steps and a close. No. Today, I'm telling you why I wrote this book, who I wrote it for, and what you can expect over the next 10 weeks. Because this isn't content for content's sake. This is the official story of what happened when our church sold our building, when I almost lost my faith, and when God did something I never saw. If you ever had to start over after losing something you thought God gave you, pull up a chair and come to the front of the class, because this one is for you. But first, let me name the thing nobody talks about after a major loss. Here's what nobody tells you after loss. Everybody talks about the moment it happened. You know, the diagnosis, the layoff, the divorce papers, the foreclosure notice, the building you had to sell. But no one talks about what comes after, the silence that follows. The mornings you wake up and forget for a second that everything changed. Then it hits you again, trying to live a life that doesn't look like the one you planned. And here's the part that messes with you most. People expect you, to get over it. Because from the outside, you handled it. You made the decision. You moved forward. But inside, you're still trying to figure out who you are without the thing that you lost. You know, the gap between what happened to you and what's happening inside of you. That's where most people get stuck. And that's exactly where this book was born. Let me take you back to a moment I knew it was over. I'm going to tell you the moment I knew our church building was gone and what it did to me spiritually. The memory is still vivid. Our last service in that building, the last song faded out. People lingered in the aisles, talking in hushed tones, holding on to each other a little longer than usual. Nobody wanted to be the first to leave. Not because they didn't have anywhere to go, but because they knew once they stepped outside, nothing about our gatherings would ever be the same. See, COVID had taken so much already, but this felt different. This was personal. That building where we prayed until tears fell, where we laughed until our sides ached, where we mourned together in our darkest moments, where the memories were created. It was where faith became family. It held our milestones as well as our memories. And letting it go was one of the hardest decisions I ever made. I worried about the people who feel like their church got ripped away. I wondered if some of them would walk away altogether, thinking losing the building meant losing the presence of God. I questioned why we were even in that position. And the whole time, I carried this burden of making the right call while my heart was breaking. So here's what I want you to hear. I didn't have a clean, confident plan. I had a crushed spirit and a decision I could not undo. And God met me there, not with answers, with presence. And it reminds me of Psalm 46 and verse 1, where it says, God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in the time of trouble. He didn't explain the why. He just showed up in the where. But here's where it gets complicated. The event was one thing. What happened inside me after? Something entirely different, which brings me to my second insight. There's a difference between change and transition. I'm going to give you a framework that'll change how you process every loss that you have ever experienced. You know, the day we handed over those keys, I realized something that I realized something I'd never faced before. The real reason we get stuck. There's a real difference between change and transition. See, change is what happens on the outside of you. It's the move to a new neighborhood, the layoff you didn't see coming, the diagnosis you never asked for, the empty chair at the table. See, change is an event. You can point to it. You can name it. You can time stamp it. But transition is what happens on the inside of you. It's the grief that sets in after the news sinks deep. It's waking up and realizing life doesn't look the same anymore. It's the slow, messy work of learning to live on new ground. See, selling our building was the change. Learning how to keep leading, believing, and hoping without it, that's the transition. And the transition was far more complicated because change can happen in a moment. Transition takes time. Change is an announcement. Transition is a process. And most people get stuck because they think they're supposed to be over it by now. They handled change. They made the decision. They moved on. But nobody told them that the inside work takes longer than the outside work. And that's what we call the gap between what was and what's next. See, if you've ever felt stuck after a major loss, if you ever thought, I should be further along by now, hear me. You're not broken. You're in transition. And transition doesn't follow a schedule. Did you hear me? Transition does not follow a schedule. For it says in Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 and 9, my thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything that you could ever imagine. God isn't confused by your confusion. He's working in the parts of you that change alone could never reach. So the question is, what do you do when you're stuck between what was and what's next? That's what the rest of the series answers. Let me show you the roadmap. Which brings me to my third insight. What exactly will this series give you? I'm going to walk you through the exact roadmap of this series so you'll know what's coming and why it matters. This series, it follows the same arc of my book, and the arc is honest. We don't start with victory, we start with collapse. In part 1, we explore the descent. Episodes 1 and 2 go straight into the hard stuff. When the bottom falls out, when life stops making sense, when God goes silent and you're not sure he's paying attention anymore. And then in the first fragile steps of rebuilding. Then episodes 3 and 4, We're fighting fear and anxiety, the ache of loneliness and isolation, then learning what hopes look like when everything around you is dark and what it costs to let go. Episodes 5 and 6 are where the shift happens. We talk about gratitude as a weapon, not a cliche. Joy that isn't tied to your circumstances, new beginnings, and defining what's non-negotiable before you rebuild. Episodes 7 and 8 are the protection plan, how to guard your peace, your finances, your purpose, and your plan. Because starting over without boundaries means that you'll end up back in the same place. Episode 9 is the finale. We bring it all home. Joy is waiting. 10 episodes, each one between 15 and 20 minutes. Each one is packed with personal stories straight from my life, scripture that holds weight, and one clear practice you can take into your week. I'm not hiding anything in this series. This is the official story. How Morris Hill sold its building, how I almost lost my faith, and how God, step by step, brought joy back to a place where I thought it was gone for good. Here's what I learned. Faith may feel far, but God never is. So let me bring this home. Here's the bottom line. If you've ever had to start over, if you ever lost the thing you thought God gave you, if you've ever stood in the rubble of a life you didn't plan and wondered if joy was even possible, this podcast series is for you. I wrote this book because I needed it before it existed. I needed someone to tell me that collapse wasn't the end, that silence didn't mean God left, that grief and faith could live in the same body at the same time. See, no one told me that, so I wrote it down. And now I'm going to say it out loud, week by week, for the next 10 weeks. So start your rebuild today. If this hit you, here's what I need for you to do. First, grab the book When Faith Feels Far. It's out now on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. The link is in the description below the show notes. This series goes deeper when you read alongside. Second, if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you are, subscribe and then hit that bell so you'll be notified when the next episode goes live, because I'm dropping a new episode every week, every Tuesday, and you don't want to miss a single one. And then third, leave a comment right now. Tell me, what did you lose that forced you to start over? Come on, talk back to me. I read every single comment. This is a conversation and not a broadcast. Next week, we're going into the collapse, when the bottom falls out and life stops making sense. I'll tell you what happened in the weeks after we sold the building and why confusion doesn't mean God walked away. It'll be raw, it'll be real, and it'll give you language for something you've been feeling but couldn't name. So I'll see you next week. You've been listening to the Clarence Stowers Leadership Podcast. Join us next time for more insights on becoming 1% better each day and leveling up in all areas of life.